Hi, I'm Caleb, 35, and last month I handed my parents the keys to a $750,000 lake house I spent 6 years saving for. My mom handed them to my brother before I even parked my damn car. It was supposed to be the surprise of a lifetime. I'd been planning it since my dad's heart attack 2 years ago, when I watched him clutch his chest in a recliner that leaned more like a cracked lawn chair than anything medical. That night in the ER, he told me his biggest regret was never having a place near the water. A porch, he said, where your mom and I can drink coffee and hear loons instead of sirens. So I made that my mission. I'm a mechanical engineer. I don't buy new shoes until mine leak. I drive a 2009 Civic with a tape deck. Every bonus, every freelance contract, every canceled vacation went into a fund labeled Porch with Loons. I didn't tell anyone, not even my girlfriend. I wanted it to be clean, quiet, a moment that didn't need to be shared with followers or filtered through group texts. The house I found was perfect. 2 stories, all cedar, right on Lake Huron. Fireplace, deck, wraparound windows. You could hear the water just opening the screen door. I bought it outright. No mortgage. I even pre-stocked it with groceries my dad liked: Tang, frozen waffles, ham salad, and left a letter in the master bedroom drawer that just said, "Retire here. Love, Caleb." I picked them up from their condo on a sunny Saturday and told them I had a surprise. My mom clapped. My dad looked confused but smiled like he was bracing for bad karaoke or a puppy. We drove 3 hours. They didn't ask questions, just held hands like it was prom again. When we pulled up, my mom gasped. My dad muttered, "Is this a resort?" I grinned, handed over the keys, and said, "No, it's yours." And that's when everything cracked. Because my mom blinked like I'd just given her a math test and said, "Oh, you meant this for us?" Before I could even get out of the car, she had opened the front door, and my brother's voice came floating down the hallway. "Hey, you made it." I froze. What the hell was Drew doing here? He wasn't supposed to be within 200 miles of this house. He lives in Milwaukee, works in insurance, somehow always in a crisis, always 3 days from getting back on track. And there he was, shirtless, beer in hand, standing in the kitchen of the house I hadn't even seen lit up at night yet. I walked in and saw shoes scattered by the door, his golf bag propped against the stairs, and this part still makes my chest burn: his name on a note stuck to the fridge. Drew Wi-Fi password on the router. Cold beer in the downstairs fridge. Love, Mom. She'd been here before. She'd brought him here before I even gave her the keys. Surprise, she said weakly. Drew needed a place to stay. His roommate situation fell apart. I looked at my dad, expecting confusion or apology, but he just looked down, and that's when I realized they had already given it to him. Before I even parked my damn car. I didn't yell. I should have. I should have gone nuclear, flipped a table, screamed something cinematic like, "This was supposed to be your retirement dream, not Drew's crash pad." But I didn't, because that's not how I was raised. I was raised to keep it together, to be the good one. Instead, I set my bag down gently and said, "How long has he been here?" My mom fiddled with a kitchen towel like it might turn into a shield. "Just a few days. Maybe a week." "A week," I repeated. "I signed the papers 5 days ago. He needed a place to land," she said. "You know how rough it's been since Megan left, and he lost his job, and totaled his car," I added, "and burned through his savings, and forgot to show up for Thanksgiving." She flinched at that. My dad opened the fridge and stared into it like it might hold a better version of this conversation. Drew wandered into the room like we were discussing wallpaper, not trespassing. "Look, Caleb," he said, "I didn't know this was your thing. Mom said it was the family place." I turned to her. "Did you say that?" Well, I didn't think you'd mind. Didn't think I'd mind. I bought them a lake house, and she didn't think I'd mind my brother squatting in it like a summer intern with boundary issues." I turned to Drew. "You've been here alone?" He grinned. "Not exactly." Cue the sound of a woman's voice upstairs, laughing at something on TV. My jaw locked. "You brought a date." He shrugged. "A friend." And then I saw the wine glasses on the coffee table. One lipstick stained. One smeared with barbecue sauce. This wasn't just a crash pad. It was his new bachelor pad. I stepped outside before I said something I couldn't take back. The lake was still, peaceful. The porch chairs I'd picked out, the ones Dad once said looked like the kind rich people fall asleep in, were facing the water. Empty. And used. Because my parents hadn't even stayed the night yet. They'd let Drew move in before they'd unpacked a single box. I heard the screen door creak behind me. It was Dad. He sat down next to me. Didn't say anything for a moment. Then, we didn't know how to tell him no. I nodded slowly. "So you told him yes for me?" "He's your brother," he said. "He's a grown man," I replied. Dad sighed. "He said it would just be for a week. He said he needed a win." So did you, I said. That's why I bought this place. He looked older than I remembered. Smaller. Like the weight of being someone's father had worn him down instead of building him up. I'm sorry, he said. Quiet. Honest. I nodded. What's done is done. But he's not staying. He'll push back, Dad warned. I stood. Let him. Because if I've learned anything from being the designated fixer in this family, it's that eventually, if you never draw the line, people will walk all over you thinking they're dancing. And I was done dancing. I didn't sleep that night. Not because the bed was uncomfortable, it was a brand new memory foam I'd ordered from a site that had peace in the name, but because every creak of the floorboards felt like an insult. Every slamming door from Drew's late-night wanderings echoed like a slap. At 2:17 a.m., I sat in the kitchen with a mug of black coffee and a folder. Inside were all the documents, the deed, the receipts, the transfer papers. All signed, all notarized. The house was in my parents' names. Legally, fully theirs. But I held all the leverage. Because I'd made one smart move. I'd written the contract with a stipulation this home was a gift, yes, but it could not be sold, rented, or reassigned without my written consent. It was my way of protecting them from bad decisions. And from Drew. At 7 a.m., I knocked on his bedroom door. He answered in a robe. Time to go, I said. He blinked. Excuse me. You're leaving. Today? He laughed. Like I was the valet. Why? I held up the folder. Because this isn't your house. It never was. And if you don't pack up and head out by noon, I'll have the locks changed by 12:01. You can't be serious. I didn't answer. I just turned and walked downstairs, poured a fresh cup of coffee, and waited. 15 minutes later, I heard him storming into the kitchen, Mom trailing behind him in a floral robe and a panic. Caleb, she whispered, can we just talk for a second? I gestured to the table. Sure, but he's leaving. Drew stood with his arms crossed, still convinced his indignation was some kind of defense. I didn't ask to be thrown out, he said. And I didn't ask to find you barefoot in a house I bought as a sanctuary for two people who worked their whole lives for peace. He looked at Mom. You said it was okay. She looked away. For once, she didn't defend him. That cracked something in him. He turned to me, face hardening. You think money makes you better than me? No, I said. But responsibility does. And until you learn how to live like your choices have consequences, you don't get to coast on other people's generosity. He shook his head. Unbelievable. What's unbelievable, I said, is that you think being my brother earns you squatter's rights. Dad entered then, holding 2 trash bags. He walked straight to Drew. Car's out front. You can load up. Drew stared at him, stunned. You're siding with him? I'm siding with the only person in this room who shows up. Drew's face collapsed, not anger now, just shock. Fine, he muttered. I'll leave. But don't expect me to come back. You already didn't, I said. You just showed up for the keys. He stormed out, hauling the bags and slamming the screen door behind him. We watched through the window as he tossed them into the back of a borrowed sedan and peeled out like a teenager denied the car on prom night. Silence settled. Mom exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for 3 years. Thank you, she said quietly. I nodded. It's your house. But you don't owe him your peace. Dad sat heavily at the table. We didn't know how to stop it. You just did, I said. Now let's not unstop it again. That morning, we had pancakes on the deck. Mom finally used the chairs. Dad smiled at the lake like it forgave him for everything. And I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt calm. But I knew that calm wouldn't last. Not with Drew. And I was right. Because 3 days later, I got a letter from his lawyer. It was a claim to partial ownership of the house, based on a verbal agreement with my mother. It was complete garbage. But it was about to get loud. The letter arrived on a Thursday. Typed. Formal. Stuffed with legal-sounding nonsense like implied familial intent and verbal assurance of co-occupancy. According to Drew's new attorney, a man who either owed him a favor or shared his love of fantasy, my mother had clearly and repeatedly expressed that the Lakehouse was meant to be shared equally among both her sons. Therefore, Drew was entitled to ongoing and reasonable access to the property. It would have been hilarious if it wasn't so pathetic. I sat at my desk, rereading the phrase ongoing and reasonable like it might morph into something less ridiculous. It didn't. I called my mom. She answered on the second ring, breathless. Caleb, I was just about to call you. Did you tell Drew this house was half his? A long pause. I may have said something like that. Mom. He was upset. I was trying to calm him down. I said maybe one day you'd be willing to share. My eye twitched. And now his lawyer is trying to turn that into a property claim. She gasped. No. Oh God, Caleb, I didn't think. That's the problem, I snapped. No one thought. Except me. I thought this through. I spent years planning this house. I put in protections because I knew this could happen. I didn't mean to start a war, she whispered. You didn't, I said. But Drew did, and I was going to end it. I called my lawyer, Frank 60, no nonsense, and the type of guy who used phrases like open and shut and meant them. He read the letter once and laughed so hard I heard his glasses hit the desk. Not enforceable, he said. Not even close. You can't turn guilt into a deed. Still, we drafted a response. Calm, firm, factual. The Lakehouse was owned by Ruth and Gerald Weston, fully deeded and titled. The original purchase was a gift, with legal stipulations that blocked resale or reassignment. No co-ownership existed, verbal or otherwise. Frank sent it certified mail, signature required. Then we waited. Meanwhile, Drew took to social media. First post, a photo of the Lakehouse with the caption built on lies. Bought with shame. Second post, a blurry childhood photo of the two of us on bikes. Caption some brothers give. Some just take. Third post, a TikTok where he dramatically walked through a generic waterfront trail, voiceover saying, when your own blood throws you out to feel superior. My phone buzzed for days. Cousins, old classmates, even my ex from college, all asking what the hell was going on. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because on Monday morning, Frank called and said, "You're not going to believe this." Drew had attempted to file an injunction to block any changes to the property, including locks, utilities, even furniture replacement. He'd listed himself as a beneficiary in dispute. It was tossed out in 18 minutes. But that wasn't the victory. The real win came 2 days later when I got a letter in the mail. From my parents. Handwritten. Apologizing. Not just for Drew. For everything. For every time they let him slide. Made excuses. Left me to pick up the slack. For leaning on me like a walking safety net and pretending it was just being responsible. Inside the envelope was a second document. A revised estate plan. My parents had added me as medical and financial power of attorney and had rewritten the terms of the trust. The house would remain theirs as long as they lived, but I would hold the legal authority to manage it. Drew was out. Legally. Permanently. No ongoing access. No shared porch. No more arguments. Just silence. Except, he didn't go quietly. 3 days after the letter, someone egged the side of the house and left a note in the mailbox. You'll regret choosing him. We didn't report it. We installed cameras instead. And that was when the truth really came out. Because a week later, we caught something worse on the footage. Something I couldn't forgive. The footage was grainy, but the outline was unmistakable. It was Drew. Middle of the night. Hoodie pulled low. Parking his car a few houses down and creeping across the side yard with a gallon of gasoline and a box of matches. You read that right. Matches. The kind you strike when you want to send a message, not light a barbecue. He didn't pour it. Didn't strike anything. But he walked the perimeter of the house with the can like it was a paintbrush, like he was imagining the flames, tasting the power. Then he tucked a note under the welcome mat and disappeared into the dark. I watched that video 10 times. Not because I didn't believe it, but because part of me wanted to see something else. Some other explanation. Maybe he was just drunk. Maybe it was water. Maybe the note said, sorry. It didn't. It said, you win. For now. That was it. Just those 4 words. But they tasted like smoke. I showed it to my dad first. He didn't speak for a full minute. Just kept rubbing the space between his eyes, the way he used to when the bills didn't balance. He was going to burn our house, he whispered. No, I said. He was going to scare us into thinking he might. We took the footage to the local sheriff's department. I didn't press charges, not yet. But I filed an official report. The deputy, a tired-looking woman with kind eyes, said, you made the right call. Just keep the cameras on. And let us know if he comes back. My mom cried when she saw the footage. Not for Drew, but for herself. I thought I raised better, she said. You did, I told her. But then you kept rescuing worse. After that night, I made changes. Security system with remote monitoring. Floodlights with motion sensors. A new mailbox metal, bolted down, no welcome mat. No hiding places. I also hired a lawyer with a spine of titanium to draft a formal no-contact letter. Not a restraining order, but close. It laid out boundaries in brutal legal terms. Any trespass on the property would be met with immediate police involvement. Any vandalism, threats, or attempts to access utilities or accounts would trigger a lawsuit. We sent it by courier. Drew signed for it. He also posted a TikTok that day wearing sunglasses and saying, when your own family treats you like a criminal for needing a break. The comments were divided. Some called him out. Most didn't care. But I did. Because this wasn't just about boundaries anymore. It was about erosion. About a man who'd spent 35 years pretending the world owed him peace, and was now furious the world wanted him to earn it. 2 days later, the HOA called. Apparently, Drew had filed a complaint against me. Said I was operating a surveillance network in a residential neighborhood and intimidating family members with military-level security. I laughed when I heard it. The HOA did not. They demanded a meeting. So I went. I showed up with a laptop, a calm voice, and a printed packet labeled Timeline of Incidents. They blinked when they saw it was 27 pages long. Page 1, Property Deed. Page 2, the social media posts. Page 3, the police report. Page 4, a still image of Drew carrying the gas can, time-stamped. I didn't yell. I didn't raise my voice. I just made it clear. This is what I'm protecting my parents from. When I was done, the president of the HOA said, "We'll be reaching out to Mr. Weston." The other one. Drew got a formal warning from the neighborhood council and a notice that any further misconduct would result in a community ban. The silence after that was exquisite. No eggs. No notes. No threats. Just wind in the trees and the sound of my mom finally sleeping past 5 a.m. But peace has an echo. And sometimes, even quiet can't cover guilt. Because a week later, I came downstairs early to find my mom at the table, eyes red, hands shaking. She slid a stack of old photos toward me. "Can you shred these?" she said. "I don't want to see him at birthday parties anymore." She didn't say his name. She didn't have to. We both knew who we were erasing. I stared at the stack of photos: Drew at age 6 in a Spider-Man costume, Drew blowing out candles, Drew holding a trout next to Dad by a dock that no longer exists. They weren't just pictures. They were proof. That once he'd mattered. That once we'd tried. I picked up the stack, thumbed through it like a deck of apologies, then quietly slid them into the shredder. Not out of spite, but out of mercy. My mom watched the strips fall like confetti at a funeral. She didn't cry again. She just whispered, "Maybe now we can start fresh." And we did. The house changed after that. Not in any grand renovation way, no new furniture, no splashy upgrades, but in air. It felt lighter, like the tension had been scrubbed out of the drywall. My dad started fixing things again, humming while he did. Mom cooked more. Badly, but with joy. I found her on the porch one morning in slippers and curlers reading a mystery novel. She looked up and said, "The killer is obviously the nephew," then giggled like she was 16. It was the first time I'd heard her sound unserious in years. We stopped saying Drew's name. Not in some cult-like way, just organically, the way you stop referencing a season when it's clearly over. I still got the occasional message from him. Venmo requests for emotional damage. Passive-aggressive song lyrics posted to shared playlists. Once, he mailed me an invoice for trauma counseling with a smiley face drawn in Sharpie. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The silence was my reply. The house became what it was always meant to be, a place to rest. My parents started hosting old friends again. They sent me texts with terrible lake puns. "What are you up to?" "Current mood." "Porch." And one day, I found a note from Dad in the drawer where I'd hidden the original letter when I bought the place. It said, "Thank you for giving us a soft landing." Below that, Mom had written in her handwriting, "and for finally learning to say no louder than we said yes." That night, I sat on the porch alone, listening to the loons, the wind, the kind of silence that isn't empty but earned. I looked at the house and realized it was still mine, not by law, not even by ownership, but by truth. I gave it to them, and then I protected it. That's what love is. Not endless giving, guarding what you give.